Webster, thanks for coming on the show. I know you got some great topics. Randy Credico here locally in New York, a few other things we'd like to get to. How you feeling, and what's on your mind these days?
Well, I'm urging people to prepare for action. We have far too many legions of complainers and second guessers. We've got politicians who are willing to bet a lot on the idea that the United States is finished as a country in the Republican Party and among the Democrats as well. But I recommend something totally different. Let's just look at the political situation. Between now and the end of the year, there are three big things in terms of elections, right? There's Virginia governor, and the Republicans have a governor here who's so corrupt in Virginia that he really stinks to high heaven. And that may open the door to Terry McAuliffe of the Clinton machine. So that we can forget. Then we have New Jersey, right? We have the Garden State Goering. And looks like Christie's going to win. That's really partly Obama's fault. Obama made him great. It was a kind of a mutual help society between two bums, Obama and Christie. But now we have New York City mayor. And this is what I think we should focus on. Here we have a candidate who actually has a program which is adequate to lead New York City, the metropolitan area, and the entire United States out of the crisis. A program adequate for dealing with the world economic depression. And this is Randy Credico. People may know Randy Credico. It's Credico. The website is www.credico2013.org. If you want to send him an email, there is a certain modest bureaucracy which is taking shape. Credico2013@gmail.com. And Credico is Credico. Randy Credico. He had a career as a stand-up comedian. And the people that I've talked to who have seen his performances say he's a pretty good one. But then he met William Kunstler, the civil rights attorney and attorney for various left-wing causes. And he was the head of the Kunstler Foundation for a decade or more. But right now he's running for mayor of New York. And here's the thing. As of the end of this week, actually, as of tomorrow, unless some unforeseen challenge comes out of nowhere, Credico will be certified on the Democratic primary ballot. So if you're a registered Democrat in New York City, right, the 5 boroughs, you can vote for Credico in the Democratic primary on September 10th, Tuesday, September 10th. But in addition to this, because we want to make this candidate and his program above all, which is mainly what I want to talk about, available to more than just Democrats, what we're attempting to do now is to get 7,500 signatures, which is not that much. This can be done. It's doable. In order to get on the Democratic Party primary, he submitted more than twice as many as that. So this is now 7,500. I mean, the legal minimum is about 3,500. But we always, in New York State, because of the hyper-technical flim-flam they throw at you, you got to have more than twice the required number, because then they challenge you if they think they can. We're going to get Credico on the ballot in November, all the way to the first week in November. And this will no longer be the Democratic Party. This will be a new party whose time has come. This is the Tax Wall Street Party. Tax Wall Street Party. Wow. And that's a party, I think, that could take off and really begin to make a difference, not just this year, but in the coming years, right? In the coming, for example, in the congressional elections of next year. The idea of this in broad terms is to take the spirit of Occupy, at least the rational core, I guess we could say, of Occupy, which is to say the enemy is the banker. The enemy is the finance oligarch, right? The enemy is the speculative parasite who's destroying society, right? People like Jamie Dimon, Lloyd Blankfein, and the rest of them, right? The people who control the federal government, the people who hired Obama, and perhaps try to fire him, but that's harder to do. But certainly have been running the federal government and of course the state and city governments in New York. So the tax Wall Street party, and the heart of the matter, therefore, is that you can take that spirit, right? You can take the idea of knowing what the main problem in the society is. It's too much power to those bankers, but this time now, get some teeth in it, right? Make this something that goes somewhere. Well, Occupy Wall Street seemed to think it was enough to call them, bad names, right? To be mean to them, right? To diss them in public. They don't care about that. They care about money. So therefore, the centerpiece of the Credico for mayor in the Democratic Party, and then as tax Wall Street all the way to November, is the Wall Street sales tax, right? Remembering that the big problem in the United States is that Wall Street pays no taxes. They pay no federal corporate income tax, and above all, they pay no sales tax of any kind on quadrillions, thousands of trillions of dollars of speculative turnover in stocks, bonds, real estate, mortgage-backed securities, and above all, derivatives, right? Some of which are these other things that I've mentioned. But the derivatives, that's really the big one, right? There are quadrillions of derivatives, thousands of trillions that change hands every year. So with this, Credico can therefore say, if you institute, he's calling for a 0.5% Wall Street sales tax for the city of New York. Now, I in the past have called for a 1% federal tax, which would then be divided between the federal government, half of it, and the states taking half of it through revenue sharing. And eventually that money could get down to localities also through the states. But in this case, since it's New York, and since New York can and should take the lead, 0.5% is certainly a reasonable tax for the city of New York to impose on Wall Street, quite independent of what other jurisdictions may do or not do. So that's the big idea of the Credico campaign, is that tax Wall Street, the Wall Street sales tax. And remember, this is its revenue. The most conservative estimates on this are 60 billion, 80 billion, something like this for the city of New York, if it's 0.5%. I think in reality more, and I always have to say the uncertainty about this is that despite the Dodd-Frank law, or maybe because of the Dodd-Frank law being so toothless, we still don't know the true amount of over-the-counter derivatives. In other words, there are credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, structured investment vehicles. We simply don't know. So we're always guessing, right? We think that the amount of derivatives in existence at any given time is about 2,000 trillion, and the turnover, right, since they get bought and sold every year, is probably up to 5 to 6 quadrillion per year. But again, we're guessing to some extent. One way to find out is to have some important jurisdiction, like the city of New York, begin to collect this tax. So there's no doubt about the constitutionality. New York State has a tax on stock turnovers, which is on the books, but it's not collected. Wall Street was able to extort from Governor Hugh Carey of New York in the late 70s that money would be immediately paid back to Wall Street. Isn't that charming? That would already be 30 billion, and that's a much smaller tax. So this would be, I think, anything up to 100 billion, which would, of course, solve the New York City budget problem. It would make all the brutal austerity, right, the primitive cuts, the genocidal measures of cutting the budget, makes all of that unnecessary. So the main thing we want out of this is revenue, but then there's also another tremendous benefit, which I can outline if you...
Yes, why don't we do that right on the other side of the break? We could also maybe clean up the stinking subways, too, but we'll talk about that with Webster Tarpley.
You're going to have to rebuild those subways, right? Go out to Brooklyn sometime.
Time to go on break. Hold on. All right, good friends, welcome back. Listen, we're with Webster Tarpley, tarpley.net. Always fascinating information. He has his own show on the weekends. on the GCN network that you can listen to, World Crisis Radio.
Tom, I also have one on the Unbound Radio Network.
Okay, well,
Tarpley program on the Unbound.
Okay, that's all on your website, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, sure. You can hear Tarpley. It all.
Tarpley.net.
Right.
Okay. Well, Webster, I hear what you're saying. It looks like finally somebody is rising to the occasion. You've been talking about this Wall Street Tobin tax for a long time. It is very tangible. Here in New York, they always threaten the politicians. Okay, you want to tax us? We'll just go move across the river to Jersey, or we'll go someplace else. How realistic do you think that is if this really got pushed?
Well, they're bluffing. They're not gonna be able to leave their huge investments in all those office buildings and the New York Stock Exchange being where it is. You move the New York Stock Exchange to New Jersey and call it the Secaucus Stock Exchange. I'm sorry. That won't cut the mustard. The other broader thing is there are 8 million or so people there. They want to exploit them, right? They can't just say we'll leave you alone. No, they want to come and suck your blood. So they can't just leave because they've got to stay because they've got their tentacles and their claws into various things. So no, Wall Street is not going to secede. I wish they would, but they'll never do that in a million years. The other thing, of course, is.
Well, isn't that what they pulled on Kerry? You mentioned Kerry. What did they?
They threatened him. In other words, he was eager to capitulate, like the average Wall Street Democrat. He was falling all over himself to surrender to the Wall Street blackmail. But again, it's time for political leadership, right? Somebody's got to take the first step. If we go on with this stuff, about they'll go away and you won't get the benefits. No, also because. There are other powerful interests in New York that are not going to leave, and they're going to be buying and selling stocks and other things. So, right, as soon as the transaction crosses the city line, that's when the tax is going to be levied, and that can be done now. So no. Look, the other thing about it is this. It's revenue for the city right now. The other thing is to somehow rebalance this playing field because the curse of the United States over the past 30 years is that the tax laws and other laws are doctored in such a way that speculation is automatically more profitable than production. The deck is stacked in favor of speculation and against people who want to manufacture a product and sell it. And one of the obvious ways is if you want to manufacture a product, any kind, right? Agriculture, industry, whatever it is, mining, infrastructure, that's going to be taxed at various points. But as soon as you're in the world of speculation, no tax. So we've got to get taxing back into the world of stock transfers, for example, so that people will then be able to say, well, stock speculation used to be the royal road, but now it's not so clear because, these people do microsecond trading, right? They do program trading.
Everything counts in large amounts, right? So you can be making small amounts, but if there's enough of them, it adds up. And the tax would not only bring in revenue, but it would also discourage a lot of that sort of thing, too, which isn't a bad thing.
It would discourage it. Speculation is a huge social evil. Any honest account of what's happened in the past 20 years would have to talk about a casino economy, over-financialization, excessive reliance on financial services, neglect, therefore, of farms and factories and other kinds of modern productive apparatus. So if you're going to have flash trading, you can do 1 million transactions per second. Fine. You're going to do 1 million transactions per second? Great. You're going to pay 1% each time, and you can see that you'll run out of money before you get too far into that second. So with this, let me just go through a couple of other program points from Credico. One of the obvious things is you have a mass of unemployed youth in New York City. You have Black, Hispanic, and other youth. And this is the point where a Works Progress Administration, right, or a Franklin D. Roosevelt-style job program would be the thing to do. The city could do this using money from Wall Street through this tax. So you'd be giving, for example, ghetto kids summer jobs, right? Give them the experience of working and everything that goes with it, and then let those jobs continue, right? So WPA, PWA, CCC, whatever it is, right, in the parks, you can do all that stuff with a job program. Another thing is City College, right? the City University of New York, the famous CUNY. People can remember City College used to be free, right? The entire leadership of the neocon faction started out at CCNY. You could get a great education for no money. Same thing at Queens College, Brooklyn College, and so forth. And that's all gone now. That has to be restored, and that can be restored thanks to Wall Street. Wall Street will pay. So a job program, an education program.
I mentioned infrastructure. You've been here. You've traveled the subways with me. It is decrepit. It is actually decrepit, some of the subway stations.
I mean, if you go out to Brooklyn, you're dealing with a system that's more than 100 years old. And that's it's impossible, right? I guess they have built something. Something is being built now on the east side, but up until that point, the
Second Avenue subway going up the east side. Also, they're extending the 7 line all the way to the west side to the Javits Convention Center too.
But the 7 line, right, the Flushing line was the last one in 1940. So from 1940 until essentially now, nothing was built. So there's a huge backlog of things that have to be provided. There's also an argument which Credico raises is it has been argued that collecting the fare on the subway is still costing you more than the fare brings in. Why not make the whole thing free thanks to Wall Street? Let them pay. Obviously, you want to stop the privatization of the schools.
Well, I think with $60 billion a year coming into New York City, we might be able to swing that, actually.
Absolutely. In other words, none of this stuff is utopian. A lot of it would be self-evident, except for the fact that Wall Street insists on paying no tax. And as Credico has pointed out, this is like the French aristocracy before 1789, right? The Ancien regime, the old regime in France. What was the system? The clergy paid nothing, and the nobility paid nothing. And the only people who were taxed were the bourgeoisie and the peasants. So the people living in cities, and the people who were out as poor farmers. And that's sort of what we have now, except that instead of having a nobility or a clergy, we've got Jamie Dimon and company, or Immelt of GE, right? Who some of these companies not only pay nothing, but they game the system so they get back several $1 billion a year. Imagine that, if you could do that. Well, again, this is a way to turn it around. So rebuild the infrastructure and stop this destruction of the public school system, right? Stop the busting of the teachers union and similar things. And again, if you don't have the Wall Street sales tax, every promise is a fraud, right? These other candidates, Weiner and Quinn and Thompson, anything they promise you is guaranteed to be a lie because they don't have the money to do it, and they never will because they won't touch Wall Street, right? Most of these people are controlled by Goldman Sachs. Now, actually, on this, we can talk about Weiner in a minute, right? Weiner is always good for some laughs, but although it's horrendous, right? When you think about it, right? There's a Roman Empire, right? Not even the Emperor Nero would send pictures of himself in the way that old Weiner has. But just people are now looking to Christine Quinn and Bill Thompson, right? These are Christine Quinn has been the head of the city council, and Bill Thompson is a former controller of the city. Now, the thing about Quinn, this is a tool of Bloomberg, right? One of the things about New York, when you look at it, is that it's a city that is emerging from 12 years of the dictatorship of finance capital, right? And that it was the naked dictatorship of finance capital as mediated through Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg was nothing but Wall Street, Wall Street, Wall Street, right? And everything Wall Street wanted, Bloomberg would do. One of the things he wanted at a certain point was to have a third term, right? There was a term limit system. The mayor could serve 2 terms, and he had to get a special law passed so that he could have his 4th term. Right?
Well, as a New Yorker, I could fill you in on that. First of all, he said he wouldn't do it beforehand. Then he went ahead and did it because the city required him during this financial crisis. And then he paid off the city council and said, you know what, not just me, you all give yourselves the ability to run beyond your term limits as well. So that's how that
happened. My sources tell me that the person who made this all possible was Quinn. In other words,
she was the head of the city council.
The head of the city council. So without her, None of this could have been done.
No, she's definitely his protege. No question about it.
So if you want the continuation of Bloomberg, then you vote for Quinn. Now, since you're such a dyed-in-the-wool New Yorker, Tom, tell me the dirt about Thompson, because that, frankly, I have had a harder time.
Bill Thompson, he's just he's an appointee. I think the other interesting thing is the Asian American who also was a controller who's running as Lou. They've tried to nail him with the campaign finance issues and so forth, but really there's something, Webster, that I'd like you to address briefly. If all these things happened here in New York City and we cleaned up the subway, put heaven forbid, a modern infrastructure in place, clean the city up, put people to work, painting things, the city would really become beautiful and a beacon. And that in itself would attract, it seems to me, lots of people, lots of business, no?
Yes, but again, we are trying to lead the world out of a world economic depression of unprecedented proportions. And the main purpose of this thing is to take this idea of the Wall Street sales tax and put that on the map worldwide.
No, I didn't mean to suggest my point was the main point. You made the main point. I was just saying, as an aside,
never have a recovery. Yes, of course. If you had more rational government, you'd obviously have higher revenue from the existing tax structures and multiple benefits. But again, the only
all right, listen, we got to jump off. That's Bizet in the background, another hero. We'll talk with Webster Tarpley right on the other side of the break. Tom Cowley, INN, right back after this. Good friends, welcome back. A couple of New Yorkers here tonight. Webster Tarpley, he lives in Washington, but originally from Queens, there, Flushing area, by where the Mets play, Wall, right, and the U.S. Tennis Center and all that, and the old good old World's Fair. I'm over here in Brooklyn. But it's not just inside baseball. We're not just talking about a local New York story here. I think Webster is quite right to point out that this could serve as a template for a lot of other cities and a lot of other places, states, maybe even countries for that matter, on how to, if we have the courage, right, Webster, to stop just saying the emperor has great clothes on and say, come on, let's do something differently.
Of course, we've got tremendous crises. We've got the bankruptcy of Detroit and the perspective of looting the pensions and the health care of lots of people, and of course the destruction of Detroit was not done by unions and certainly not only by the Democratic Party, but mainly by the crackpot executives of General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, who decided to ship all the jobs overseas, right? If you want to see an example of an incompetent, failed ruling class, look at Detroit, because at that point you'd have to say any ruling class that lets that happen should be fired. The salvation of Detroit, I would say, goes through this tax Wall Street party coming out of New York. Another one is you look at the Republicans. The Republicans in the Supreme Court have now gutted the Voting Rights Act, and they're in the process of trying to destroy, literally, the food stamp program, right? SNAP, and we've even got lunatic Republicans who want to shut down the government on October 1st because they think that somehow that Obamacare is communism. I would say no. I think people should, if you're eligible for Obamacare, and that's the only way you can get medical care, which is true for a lot of people, you should sign up for it and then figure you're going to get inside that system and fight to make it better, right? To move it in the direction of Medicare for all. But again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves now. The thing is, you've got this zoo going on now, right? You've got Quinn, who is the tool of Bloomberg. We got this other hack, corrupt hack, Thompson. We've got Liu. These people are they're just a continuation of Bloomberg under other means. And then we got Weiner, right? Everybody's focused on Weiner and his sexual psychopathology, which is certainly on display. Look at Weiner on the issues just for 1 second, right? Here's a right-wing Democrat, Weiner, right? A Wall Street Democrat, if there ever was one, who voted for the Iraq War, okay? In 2003, he voted in favor of the Iraq War. Isn't that great? Credico tells me that whenever he's up on the podium there with Weiner, Weiner says, please stop calling attention to the fact that I voted for the Iraq War, because that's really hurting me, man. You stop doing that. Well, no, it's time to hammer him even more, because that shows what he's made of, right? That he has no morality. So Weiner voted for the Iraq War. He voted for the TARP. He voted for the TARP twice. The bailout of Wall Street in September 2008, when it failed, he voted for it. And in October 2008, when the arm twisting succeeded in getting a majority, he voted for it that time too. And the other one he voted for is the Patriot Act in 2001. So this guy is worthless, right? He's got no backbone. He's a Wall Street Democrat. And then let's look at the long-suffering wife, Huma Abedin. Huma is essentially a creature of Hillary Clinton. I mean, the two of them can only be seen as a stalking horse for Hillary Clinton in 2016, which I think is a terrible, terrible perspective. She was Hillary Clinton's body woman, right? Her body servant, her constant companion on the road, right? Attending to every immediate personal need of Hillary Clinton. So there was all kinds of salacious speculation about what the relation between Huma and Hillary really was. And this I don't
sounds
care
like
about.
Eleanor Roosevelt all over again.
Not in the least. Eleanor Roosevelt had tremendous moral qualities. I think this woman is a degenerate.
No, the salacious side of her enemy.
Yeah, but unfortunately, our listeners may not know this stuff. Anyway, I would not mention Eleanor Roosevelt and Huma in the same paragraph or even on the same day. So Huma is also, her father is a big cheese in the Muslim Brotherhood, right? So you look at that government in Egypt, right? Mohammed Morsi, what did he do? Sold out to the International Monetary Fund and was trying to use the formidable Egyptian army to attack Syria. That's what he was up to. That's the wonderful fruits of the Muslim Brotherhood. And she is, she's the Muslim Sisterhood, and she wants to be the First Lady of New York there in Gracie Mansion. I'm sorry. So when we've got this array of hacks and corrupt, wheelhorse operatives, and then Weiner, right? He's now the laughing stock of the world twice over. As you were saying, it is obviously imperative that Credico be allowed into these debates, right? Because he's got an actual program, which most of these people don't have, right? What could Weiner's program be, right? To send out more and better emails of himself, right? And Quinn, to perpetuate the ideas of Michael Bloomberg for another dozen years or more, right? So this is impossible. So the thing that people have to do now, having said all this, get out and help Credico, right? If you're a New York City registered voter, you got to sign. So here's what you do. You go to Credico's website, and I've already mentioned it. It is Credico2013.org, Credico 2013.org. And there you find a downloadable petition form to get the Tax Wall Street Party on the ballot in the November general election. Now, in signing for this, you don't have to be a Democrat, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, whatever you are, no party, independent. As long as you're a New York City registered voter, you can sign it. If you're in, Nassau County or Yonkers or someplace like this, and you come into the city, you can download it. And as long as you're a New York State registered voter, you can circulate the petition. You can take it, and then you're going to witness it, right? You're going to say, I saw these people sign. They are who they say they are. You sign that, then you send it to the address that's printed on the petition. And of course, if you want to do more than this, send us an email, right? And that's the email address here, Credico2013@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And if you want to write to me directly, you can go to tarpley.net, go to the Speakers Bureau page. There's a contact feature there, and you can send me a request to be included in the campaign activities. But I urge you to get involved, right? Because here's your chance to do something. People have stopped thinking about the city of New York. It's funny. They always say, well, in the off-year election, right after the presidential election, there comes a kind of a low point where you have Virginia and you have New Jersey. And that's it. Because thanks to Bloomberg and the dictatorship of finance capital, New York City has been forgotten. Now it's not forgotten, but if it's Weiner, right? If Weiner is your way of being remembered, I guess maybe you'd want to be forgotten. But there's another way to do it, and that's Credico. And that's a programmatic candidacy. In other words, the main problem of Occupy was they had no program. And a lot of them even said we should not have a program, right? We have no demands, and we don't want to have any because we might win them, and then we'll be co-opted. That's absolutely crazy. In this case, you've got not just any program, but an absolutely first-rate program. And I also should mention it includes things like stop the police state, right? Stop the stop and frisk, right? Enough already with the Gestapo stuff that Bloomberg has been specialized in, right? And somehow to restore the police to a traditional role rather than this idea that they're a pervasive presence in the society, and begin to address the mass incarceration of black youth and other things that have been prominently in the news.
Webster, on that point, who do you think is going to run on the Republican side? Do you think Ray Kelly is going to throw his hat in the ring? The police commissioner?
Well, they say that Kelly is hoping to become the successor of Big Sis, of Napolitano.
Let's
see here.
There's a history of that here in New York.
Right. There's the previous guy that ended up in jail. Right?
That's right. Carrick, Bernie Carrick. He was a driver for Giuliani, and they fell in love with each other or something.
All right, look, who do we have here? The people that are getting polled on the Republican side are Lota, Katsimidatis, and McDonald, with Lota, L-H-O-T-A, in the lead, Katsimidatis slightly behind that, and then a smaller showing for McDonald. So the Republican Party of New York, I don't know what this amounts to.
Well, we should also point out at this juncture here, Webster, that Bloomberg is a Democrat, and he just switched over to be a Republican because he wanted to circumvent the Democratic primary on this point. By the way, right?
Right.
I mean, that's important to when you're talking about Republicans and Democrats. This he's a Bloomberg, is what he is. Whatever party, it makes no difference, and everyone's known that he's basically a Democrat in Republican clothing.
Well, a Wall Street Democrat, to be sure, right? Absolutely. All right. So there it is now. Again, the only thing missing is action, right? In other words, it's not enough to know these things. You also got to do something about it. So I urge your listeners, right, come forward, join in. And if you're out of the city, you can certainly send contributions, right? You can be part of it that way. Suppose you're a libertarian. Look, here's somebody who actually wants to take something out of Wall Street's hide. And all these other people, right? A lot of the libertarians in the Senate and so forth, they talk big against Wall Street. They don't lay a glove on Wall Street. Here's somebody who wants to. Tax Wall Street, right? Hit them where it hurts. Make them suffer. The only language they understand, money. Not that we diss them in public, right? Not that we destroy their reputation.
I don't think a 0.5% is really even hurting them, actually, no?
It is.
Psychologically.
It's on turnover. And if you're doing 1 million trades per second, that wipes you out. You're gone. If it's a 0.5% per trade, it's all gone, right? It's gone after what? After 200 trades, 100% of your money is gone. So it basically wipes out. Well, if you lost money in the flash crash of May 2010 with Credico, that could never happen. There's a whole area of volatility which simply cannot occur if you put the brakes on it this way. And that was the idea, right? It's the old Tobin tax. And Tobin tax said, we're going to put some sand in the gears and slow this thing down. And that's, in effect, what this would do.
Well, we've got the music slowing us down. So we're going to take a break, friends. Webster Tarpley in the house here on IIN World Report Radio. We'll be back with them on the other side of this break. Yeah, we don't want to be hanging by a needle and thread here in New York, especially. Everybody's concerned about that these days. We're speaking with Webster Tarpley, who, correct me if I'm wrong, Webster, it sounds like you've found a man who wants to put into practice a lot of the things that you and others have been talking about. Wall Street sales tax, very, very small amount, but on, everything counts in large amounts with all the trading. It really could make a big difference here in New York, couldn't it?
Absolutely. And you take a look at the campaign literature. I mean, I got one campaign brochure. I got there in New York at the beginning of June at that left forum, the one that's got King Kong on top of the Empire State Building. Credico's 19 promises. Then I got another one that has actually 24 program points. So this is not Occupy in the sense that it has understood the main failing of Occupy was that you had no realization, right? In other words, you didn't have a policy agenda. There were no measures. There were no demands, right? As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. You want something, you better articulate it, and you better fight for it, and you better say very loudly and specifically what it is that you want, because otherwise you're going to be lost. So that's Credico. Now, he's a remarkable person. Get to know him. Right? Come on and come to some of these campaign events.
Yeah, I met him with you here in New York at the Left Forum, and through your auspices, I'd love to have him on the show. I'll meet with him. Maybe I can even work with him on his campaign here.
Absolutely, that would be tremendous.
Sure. That
would be tremendous. And remember, the critical time is between now and the 20th of August. Right, the Democratic primary seems to be in the bag in terms of being on the ballot. But then there's this other question: the ability to go all the way to November. And to build this, right? And the idea is success means making the idea of the Wall Street sales tax common currency, right? That's got to become a household word, right?
Yeah, whether he wins or not is one thing, but getting it on people's mind is certainly another, isn't it?
Right. And these things, of course, they go together. Now, again, I urge people outside of New York City, anywhere you are, right? Take a look at your, whatever it is, right? Local, state, county rules and see what it takes to get a new party, right? A third party on the ballot. Again, you don't have to be doctrinaire. You can be a tax Wall Street Democrat. I suppose you could be a tax Wall Street Republican in some places. But you notice there's none of this doctrinaire stuff. In other words, Credico is going seamlessly from the Democratic primary to the tax Wall Street slot on the general election ballot. So there's no fetishism about, I don't want to touch the Democratic Party because they're dirty. Sure, they're dirty, but you got to go into the blood and sand of the arena and get results. And then, you use their primary for what you can get out of it. And then you go on to do whatever else you can do. And I think that's exemplary. In other words, this, not just the program, but also the strategy here is exemplary. And he's a guy who has tremendous prestige and trust in the minority community, because for so long he worked for this William Kunstler Foundation for Racial Justice. That was the foundation that he headed up for more than a decade, right? Quite a bit more than a decade. So this is somebody well known. He's got a base of support, and there's every reason to think that this can get on the map. And again, the main thing is the Wall Street sales tax and how that is sort of the indispensable condition to get out of this crisis, right? And it also exposes these other people as complete frauds, because they're going to say, oh, no, we can't tax Wall Street. Heavens, the sky would fall, right? How can we do that? Jamie Dimon might not be happy. Lloyd Blankfein might complain. Right, we can't do that. They might.
Well, yeah, that's a very powerful underlying supposition behind all of this here, locally in New York, especially. But it's just one of those things. It's like the words conspiracy theory. It just brings ridicule. It's just so beyond consideration.
Yeah. Well, there it is. So I urge people, come on out now. Don't if the world goes to hell, don't complain later. If you don't come forward now, you didn't do what you could do. And so it's a great chance. Credico is the right man in the right place at the right time with the right program, the right strategy. He needs the right organization, and that's where you people could come in.
Yeah, how is that? I mean, that's the next thing. I can see him right now, even if he does manage to get on the ballot, and even if he does manage to get into a debate, they're going to try to knock him out by saying, who are you? What experience do you have? That sort of thing. As if the people with experience have served us well, right?
How many lewd selfies have you sent?
That's pretty funny.
All of that stuff is out the window. That's in some ways that's the benefit of Weiner. That's also a way to look at it sort of tactically. The obscenity, the lewd obscenity, and the I call him Congressman Priapus, right? In the mythology, right? Priapus is this, the god of the genitalia, so to speak. So this is Congressman Priapus, and he wants you to know it, right? What's Weiner's campaign symbol? Oh my God, I can't say it on the air, right? Weiner's campaign symbol, the one that he sends out to all of his supporters. So the idea that anybody could be excluded a priori from a debate in which Weiner is acceptable, this is beyond belief. So it's just impossible, right? It's just crazy. So it's a great opportunity. And to some extent, the control has been broken, right? I think if Weiner had stayed out and just, Quinn and Thompson, they could have arranged all that, would have been controlled. But now that Weiner has come in and behaved the way that he has, I think maybe the lid is off, at least to some extent. So again, this is your chance. Summer 2013.
It's a circus already. In other words, he's not going to make it
already. Get in there with content, right? Because Weiner, the thing that's really objectionable about Weiner is the stuff about voting for the Patriot Act, voting for the Iraq War, voting for the TARP bailout for Wall Street. And then this other stuff just shows what a degenerate, right? What a depraved personality this character is.
Well, I think you're absolutely right.
Hillary Clinton, huh? That's the Hillary Clinton campaign. And they say Huma is imitating Hillary, right? When Bill went on his erotic escapades, Hillary supported him because she wanted power. And Huma has learned the same lesson from Hillary, and she's doing the same thing.
Well, no, I think it's very interesting that you point that out, that, all the comedic stuff about Weiner is bad enough, but, the real, and we shouldn't be against people merely for that sort of thing. But you, as you point out, the Iraq War, the Patriot Act and so forth, what has he got to say for himself? The bailouts and all of that. So Webster, I think that about covers it. And absolutely, through your help, we'll have New York mayoral candidate Randy Credico here on the show. I'm sure it'll be very interesting.
The sooner the better. Thank you, Tom.
We'll do that. I'm going to get you the information right away so you can help facilitate that. Give us an update here. The Arab Spring, meet the new boss, same as the old boss in Egypt. Gaddafi down, a thorn in the side for a long time, and the Assad family seems to be hanging on. What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, Egypt. Again, you have to remember, the Muslim Brotherhood is made up of rich people. The Muslim Brotherhood is the 1% of the 2% of Egypt. It is rich businessmen. It is rich doctors, lawyers, professors, editors. It's just a very elite organization. And they have the cleverness to camouflage themselves by providing these social services, right? Low-cost hospitals for the poor and similar charitable undertakings, right? Of course, they're not the only religious organization in the world that does this stuff. Lots of them do. But they make a big deal out of this, right? But the thing to understand is the Muslim Brotherhood is a brutal organization which aims at power, and in particular with Morsi, this is what they put together, right? And the thing you notice when you study the Muslim Brotherhood is that they are liars, but they're liars of an amazing impudence, right? They say things like, "We will not have a presidential candidate," and then they have more than one, or "We will not try to monopolize all power," and then they do exactly that. And these, of course, are significant things, but the reason that we can call this a counter coup, I think, is the main thing.
Well, why don't we call it that on the other side of the break, Webster, because we got the music. One more segment, friends. Webster Griffin Tarpley with us right on the other side of this break. Tom Cowley, INN, right back after this. All right, good friends. Welcome back. Tom Cowley, INN. One more segment here with Dr. Tarpley, and then after that, we're going to take your phone calls, 512-646-1984. And Webster, the Muslim Brotherhood, it seems like that the job of that organization is constantly to thwart Arab nationalism in Egypt, or pan-Arab nationalism. They seem to have done it again. What are these guys? As you paint the picture, very interesting picture, aren't these the people who would be the local oligarchs running the show if it wasn't for the big boys that are coming in from out of town?
These are the compradors, right? This is the comprador bourgeoisie, right? The people who serve imperialism on the scene and get rich and powerful in the process. The Muslim Brotherhood was created by British intelligence in Egypt around, 1927, 1928. Sabri al-Banna, I guess was the al-Banna family. And that was to try to counter the nationalists of the Waft Party who were pressing to kick the British out and have an independent country. And the British said, let's have a party that says the main issue is not whether the British run the country, but whether, the Sharia law is observed, right? And you can see what a great wedge issue that is. You can compare this, by the way, to the Republican Party, who profess religious values, even, of course, as they certainly violate the essence of Christianity, even though they profess it, and then they use that political combine to impose the interests of Wall Street, right? So this is also the group, the Muslim Brotherhood, were the ones who tried to sabotage Nasser in the 1950s, when that was the main world front against imperialism and in favor of economic development. And more recently, it's clear, any fool can see there's a worldwide alliance between the Muslim Brotherhood and the CIA, right? You have to be a pretty dumb reactionary not to see that. So anyway, you get this government, right? So the U.S. And NATO and so forth bring down Mubarak, fine. Then there's this phase of chaos, and the army is there, although under very bad leaders, right? That guy Tantawi. But out of all that then comes the main organized force, the Muslim Brotherhood. So they carry the election. They try to dominate the government and do dominate it to a large degree. When the Muslim Brotherhood was campaigning, their big spiel was, we will raise the standard of living for the poorest people in the society, economic justice. If you're a poor worker, a poor peasant, farmer, whatever, we'll do something for you. So they get into power last July, and by November they had sold out to the International Monetary Fund. And this is the decisive question in terms of the political wrecking of that government, because you run for office saying, I'm going to defend the poorest. You get into office, the IMF offers you $5 billion. You sign away the sovereignty of the country. And what did they do? They doubled the price of gasoline. And that hit everybody, right? Because that added, to the price of vegetables that were brought into town on a truck, right? If the gasoline doubles, then the price is impacted. So they doubled the price of gasoline. They raised the sales tax. Imagine that. They didn't have a surtax on the rich. They raised the sales tax as a regressive tax against the poor, and they were pushing very hard for a national value-added tax, which would have been an even worse form of sales tax. Now, that pretty much destroyed his popular support. So the political crisis of Morsi goes back to November, December, when it was clear that he was eager to be a stooge for the IMF. Now, the thing that actually triggered the ouster of Morsi was around the middle of June. June 15th is a good day because that was the biggest public event of this. Morsi began meeting with the Salafis, in other words, the people paid by Saudi Arabia. He got the Muslim Brotherhood paid by Qatar, and he got a whole bunch of crazies. He got this one of these fiery preachers who preaches jihad, fire and brimstone, right? An apocalyptic Jeremiah, we would say in Christianity. This guy, he's on Al Jazeera all the time, right? In Arabic. And he's not one of those British announcers. He's a real bearded crazy. So they all got together in the middle of Cairo and they went to this thing, jihad against Syria, jihad against Assad, right? Jihad, Assad, down with Assad. They talked about sending volunteers. They said, any Egyptian, you can go to Syria, pick up a gun, kill Syrian soldiers, and there'll be no penalty here at home, right? We have nothing against that. And it was also clear that Morsi was looking for ways to force the Egyptian army, 500,000 people, to attack Syria, okay? And that's what did it. The next day, the army put out a statement saying, look, we don't go abroad looking for fights. Our job is to defend the borders of Syria.
We had enough of that with the Israelis.
We had enough. So that's where the military coup, and again, I wouldn't call it a coup so much as a counter coup. It's a counter coup. Morsi was trying to start a war with Syria, and not even only Syria. There's also this thing with Ethiopia, right? Ethiopia said they were going to build a dam on the Blue Nile, right, that goes through their territory. And Morsi and his gang they didn't realize they were on live television. They were talking about bombing whatever the Ethiopians built, bombing their dam, and fomenting terrorist groups to try to blow up whatever the Ethiopians were building. So 2 wars, right? Not even 1 war, but Syria and Ethiopia. These are madmen, and they're madmen. The method in the madness is NATO intelligence, right? The overriding need, because it all comes out. The thing that has precipitated all this is June 5th, as I tried to point out in that speech at the Left Forum, right down there at Pace University. June 5th, the fall of Qusair is the Stalingrad of the Syrian war, right? From that point on, the death squads are losing, right? And you can see it, right, inside Syria. The death squads have been now accused by Russia of using chemical weapons. They're killing each other on a large scale, right? The emir of the Islamic Emirate of Iraq and the Levant killed one of the top officers of the Free Syrian Army Command under General Salim Idris, the golden boy of the CIA. So they're killing each other. They're kidnapping UN peacekeepers. They're using chemical weapons. They're massacring people. Everybody in northern Syria wants those killers out, right? They want the death squads out. And on the 12th of June, and don't believe anything else, John Forbes Kerry at the White House tried to start the bombing of Syria on his own, right? In the same way that Kissinger declared worldwide nuclear alert in October 1973 without waking Nixon from his slumbers, and Al Gore started the bombing of Serbia without asking Clinton, right? These are things. There was a palace coup. So the palace coup of 73 and 99, and then there would have been that one of 2013, except that some other people in the meeting stopped Kerry, right? General Dempsey of the Pentagon and some others stopped Kerry from pulling this coup. And this is a huge issue, right? This hangs over the entire political situation, right? That John Forbes Kerry tried to start that bombing. But what it shows is that the death squads are in big trouble. Now, we just had the news that the Washington Post of, the day before yesterday, Tuesday, says that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees voted in secret to authorize the money needed for sending some weapons to the Syrian terrorists, right, the rebels, and that has to be done as a CIA covert operation. Well, we have to stop this, right? This is crazy. On the other hand, it's worth noting what a small thing this is. In other words, Obama is leading from behind on this one, and I'm glad he is. I think whatever you think of Obama, the one merit that he has is he does not want the big war in Syria. He does not want to commit 1,000 aircraft and 5 divisions and 3 or 4 carrier battle groups to an attack on Syria. And that is what the British, the French, the Israelis, John Forbes Kerry, and the neocons all want. So they're all screaming for that. Whatever happens to Obama these days, you got to look at it and ask yourself, like somebody like Snowden, right? Snowden comes along. Is that a coincidence? No. Snowden is part of the effort to try to weaken Obama to the point where he will not be able to say no to the big war vis-a-vis Syria. So we're hanging on tenterhooks here.
We just got just a couple of moments left, unless you want to stay on longer. The issue I have, though, with what's going on in Egypt, right? Muslim Brotherhood, against Arab nationalism. But the military as well. What about the people of Egypt? They're not in that equation. I don't know if we have time to go into it. The music, if you want to stay on, we could.
We can stay.
All right, very good.
We got to talk about Nasserism.
Yes, very good. Okay. We've got Webster Tarpley for one more segment because, friends, it's a big question on my mind. Right back with Webster right after this. All right, good friends. Welcome back. Let's get right back to it. One more segment here. Webster Tarpley on the show now. We're going to have him for a full 90 minutes. It looks like he's going to stay. Webster, I just needed to ask you this before we finish our conversation, so I'll get right back to it. It seems to me there's 3 distinct parties in Egypt that I'm aware of anyway. Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood and what they represent, how they were created, whose bidding they do. The military, who's getting a cool, $1.5 billion from us every year for something. Okay, that stuff does have strings attached. And then the aspirations of all the people who went into, Tahrir Square thinking that they were going to be able to get free of both of these kinds of forces. How is it that the Muslim Brotherhood's bad, yet the military, who's clearly, receiving a lot of money for something from us, is better?
I think this is the wrong way to look at it, first of all, right? Because your census is incomplete. There is, for example, a movement of Nasserists, right? You have Hamdin Sabahi, who came in third, right? Morsi won the election. The second coming in was the army candidate, the old regime, right? The Mubarak candidate. And third was the Nasserist Hamdin Sabahi, who got 21% of the vote. And that's Nasserism. And Sabahi's line is no to the Muslim Brotherhood, no to the International Monetary Fund. And his line is a Tahrir tax. If you have more than $7 million, 50 million Egyptian pounds, you're going to pay a 10% one-time tax to restart the Egyptian economy. So that's populist economics. That's the stuff. And he's got a 7 or 8 point economic Bill of Rights, which looks very much like the Franklin D. Roosevelt Economic Bill of Rights of 1944. So there are more political forces than you say. The golden youth of Tahrir are a lot of them follow al-Baradei, who is an agent of the International Monetary Fund and is worthless, right? So if you're pro-Western, it generally means you're also pro-IMF. So that's not so great either. Here's the main thing. This coup was not a coup from the U.S. The U.S. did not want the coup. And you can see that. I urge you to go to IntelliHub. There are 7 or 8 pictures of signs that were put out in the streets of Cairo by the anti-Morsi people. And their line is Obama and U.S. Ambassador Ann Patterson support terrorism, support the Muslim Brotherhood, because the U.S., the State Department establishment, was doing everything possible to discourage the army. Don't coup Morsi, said the U.S. Don't go in the streets. Don't demonstrate. Stay home. Leave Morsi alone. Because, and this is where Obama's benefits end. Obama doesn't want to have 1,000 U.S. planes and 5 U.S. divisions in there, but he'd be delighted to have the Egyptian army in there. That he would be delighted. Obama tried to get Turkey in there, didn't work. If Turkey doesn't work, he's going to try Egypt, and that's what they did. So you can see from these signs that the opinion of the average, I think, intelligent person who's not in the Muslim Brotherhood is that
and who doesn't want to have al-Baradei.
Well, no, forget that. It's just that Obama and Susan Rice and Miss Patterson, they did everything they could to keep Morsi in power because they thought that he might be able to deliver the attack on Syria, and that's what they want. Now, Susan Rice fought hard to keep Morsi in power. The word is that she was fighting for Morsi until his midnight speech. The midnight speech was at around midnight local time in Egypt. Right? It was about 7 o'clock here at night. This Morsi went on television and made a raving speech, which you could see here on Al Jazeera. I watched some of it myself, where he pretty much ruled out any compromises. Right? He offered little compromises, but nothing serious. So at that point, Susan Rice said, "Okay, this guy's hopeless. He's inept. He's a bungler. He's a fool. I can't save him. I'm going to stop trying to save him." But don't kid yourself, right? The U.S. did not want this coup. Absolutely not. And the people will say, "Oh, General Sisi, right? The defense minister, General Sisi called General Dempsey, to tell him we're having a coup. I hope you can live with that, right?" And the U.S. is certainly not happy with this. Now, here's the other thing. After the coup, counter coup, the military government reopened the Syrian embassy for consular purposes. Last Saturday, the new foreign minister put out a statement saying, "We will not be a part of any jihad against Syria, and we are now considering ways to reestablish diplomatic relations between Cairo and Damascus, which were interrupted on June 15th. In other words, the day that lunatic Morsi went to his festival of bearded terrorists in downtown Cairo, he broke diplomatic relations with Syria, right? And the Syrian answer, you should see all this. I wrote all this stuff up. You can find all this written up on Tarpley.net. Syria shot back, okay, Egypt, you are now part of the Israeli-NATO conspiracy against Syria. And then when Morsi was out, Assad went on the air saying that's the death of political Islam in the Middle East. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that the new government in Egypt has broken off talks with the International Monetary Fund. This is absolutely critical. They say no to the IMF. We don't want anything to do with the IMF. Why? Because they're trying to get us to tear down our subsidy system. And the subsidy system is to keep the price of bread, cooking oil, household fuels, and a few staple kitchen products to keep that down, okay? So they say, we're going to keep our subsidies, thank you. IMF, you're not wanted. And you said this $1.5 billion from the U.S., this chicken feed, through some means which I don't quite understand myself, the new government has gotten about $12 billion from Saudi Arabia primarily. And it seems to be perhaps a rivalry between Saudi Arabia, that is to say Al Arabiya TV, if you're watching, and Qatar, which is Al Jazeera, that they are now in a rivalry. And there's been instability in Qatar, right? The old emir, who was a real radical crazy, he's out, and there's now a new guy. So I don't know what's happening in Qatar, because this is all in motion now. You got to get your French Revolution out, right? You get the different groups, right? The Girondins, they fall. Danton and the Cordeliers and Mirabeau, and they fall. And then the Jacobins, and they fall. And the Thermidorians, and they're out. And then it's Napoleon. In other words, this is moving along, right? We may be in a second revolution. Now, here's what I would say. Since the new government has said there will be no attack on Syria, and that's the immediate trigger for the whole thing.
So how long are they going to be in power?
Well, let's
with
see.
An attitude like that.
Yeah, but wait, they're going to be in power a long time because they say no to the IMF. That gains you a lot of time in the Middle East, right? In other words, any government that tries to abolish the bread subsidy will be gone. So these people have understood. Now, what I think it means is you look at the government and you see, El-Baradei, IMF puppet, and this other guy, Beblawi, the new prime minister. He's a finance guy. He's got lots of IMF credentials. So how do we reconcile the fact that the people seem to be pro-IMF, but the policies are now anti-IMF? How do we do that? And I say the following: Nasserist officers. In other words, General Sisi, I think that guy may turn out to be a Nasserist. I'm looking for Nasserists. I've been looking for Nasserists since January of 2011. Nasserists in the army and in the civil administration.
Yeah,
top bureaucrats.
The institutional memory of that is still pretty strong in Egypt, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that where a lot of these people got their start?
Yes. In other words, Nasser, long dead, is more powerful than the Muslim Brotherhood alive. Because Egypt, they have a very valuable tradition. This actually goes back to Muhammad Ali, right? The Khedive of Egypt in the 1840s, 1850s, around then, right? In the mid-19th century. They had a reforming government under this guy, Muhammad Ali, and they've had that, right? This is a country which has been in the modern world now for more than 200 years, right? Egypt was awakened, one might say, by the invasion of Napoleon, right, in the early 1800s. So this is a place with some sophistication. And now, the fact that Sisi, today, right, tomorrow, within a few hours, right, in Egypt, Sisi is calling on people to come out for a mass demonstration. So the army now appeals through the mouth of General Sisi, people come out and support us against the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood had been trying to, I think, paralyze Cairo by shutting down certain key squares and then not budging. And I think tomorrow may be the occasion for pushing them aside, so to speak, because this is rough stuff, right? This again, get your French Revolution out, and you'll see that it's rather significant. There is absolutely no evidence that this coup was backed by the CIA. None. There's every reason to think that this was an anti-IMF, anti-U.S. coup.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding. Let's see how long they can stay away from Syria. I think that would be the acid test here. Agree?
Away from the IMF. No war with Syria and no capitulation with the IMF. And then, of course, they've got to learn. You've got to create about 5 or 10 million new jobs, right? You've got to seize control of the central bank and do the things that I've been talking about for some years now.
Heavens to Betsy. Some of the stuff that Muammar Gaddafi was talking about as well. Anyway, Webster, always a pleasure. Can we say, let's make this a regular thing? How about a month from now?
Yeah, approximately, right about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through the month, huh?
Approximately. Be well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Tarpley.net, right?
Don't forget Credico.
I will be in touch, and I'll tell him you sent me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.